The following program is a podcast1.com production.
Your healthy radio addiction starts now.
Power to the people!
The Laura Ingraham Show.
It must be nice, it must be nice to have Washington on your side. It must be nice, it must be nice to have Washington on your side.
Republicans own Washington, D.C. You should not give them a single vote in keeping the government running. That's their job. This is their government. This is their Congress. This is their presidency. The American people said they wanted Republicans to run Washington, D.C. Let them run Washington, D.C. Don't give them a single vote unless they give you a clean bill on Dreamers.
Somebody has to stand up.
You're listening to the Laura Ingraham Show, 855-40-LAURA. Clean bill on Dreamers, from the Democrats' playbook to Joe Scarborough's mouth. A former Republican turned full-blown liberal will be examining all aspects of the blame game going on with an impending government shutdown because the Democrat Party cares more about illegal immigrants than they do care about the average American worker. This is a win-win for Donald Trump. The idea that these Democrats think that they're going to be my way or the highway when it comes to legalizing 800,000 people, and not just that, when you ultimately add up how many individuals those 800,000 will be able to sponsor through chain migration, that figure extends to approximately 6.5 million at the low point. So we're talking about what happens once you become an American citizen and how you're able to bring in your family members, aunts, uncles, the nightmare that is chain migration today. Oh, sorry. Dick Durbin said it's racist to say chain migration, even though he said it himself on the Senate floor. All right, we're going to examine all aspects of this. Also going to be joined by Rand Paul. He's stopping by. VDH will be here, Victor Davis Hanson. We have a great show on tap. Also, a phenomenal show on tap tonight on the Ingraham angle you do not want to miss. We've been noticing that there's, I'm not going to give it away because I know people listen to the show and I don't want them to steal my ideas. But suffice it to say, the Democrats think that none of us have any historical memory on particular issues. They feel like we'll just go about our business and respond to whatever meme of the day, Media Matters and the MSNBC types are putting out. But we're a little smarter than that. So we'll bring you the truth about what's really going on. This is pure politics. There's nothing else involved. They knew that Donald Trump could not accept that absurd Lindsey Graham attempted cram down of immigration amnesty with no meaningful border enforcement and an increase in chain migration. They knew that. And so, for days and days, I've been saying to myself, well, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I don't want to jump to this idea that this whole thing was a setup. But, it's beginning to look that way. I mean, it's probably not, but it sure could be. When I say a setup, I mean this. Graham has now gotten to know Donald Trump pretty well. And he thinks he's going to run over to the White House after having some morning call with the president. And he's going to convince the president that everything he's ever said on chain migration now is not applicable. And it's not necessary at all to make any progress on ending chain migration. And that the president will essentially just agree to legalizing 800,000 people and allowing them to bring in countless family members. So they either think that he's wildly idiotic and stupid, which I guess they could think, but I don't really think they think that. Or they think, gosh, we don't have the leverage to get what we want here, so let's just force his hand. Let's go there with a bill that we know he can't agree to. If by chance he does, then great. But he probably won't. And then we can use this as a battering ram against him in the midterm election cycle. Then we'll be able to get our email lists going. We'll be able to raise money. we'll be able to get all these Hispanics registered to vote. And then, by the way, we're gonna keep going on the race thing after the president made the comment about S-hole. We'll use that. So we'll use this to try to drum up registration of Hispanic voters. And then, even though so many Democrats and Republicans had used similar language over the years, including Barack Obama, thank you, that we're going to use that and try to then, make the final confirmation of Donald Trump's being an undying racist. He just so happened to have been able to hide it for the decades and decades that he was in business, friends with people like Jesse Jackson. That's the only thing about Trump's judgment I really will question. Friends with Jesse Jackson, did stuff with him. Obviously good friends with Oprah. All these African-American business folks he had done deals with over the years. But Trump he's been really good at hiding his racism. But we're going to go with that because what else are we going to use? 855-40-LAURA. I mean, I don't think it was a setup, but I can see why people think that. And the question is, who's going to blink first? Do you think that this president and the Republicans, remember, the Republicans are not like the Democrats. The Democrats are really united. So the Republicans could very well start criticizing the president a la Lindsey Graham en masse. Because we know a lot of these Republicans want amnesty. That's why they were against Trump in the primary. So unlike the Democrats in 2013 during the Ted Cruz deal, the Republicans can have their unity broken, in a heartbeat. The Democrats just stick together like, we're going to demonize this guy. We're going to do everything we can to demonize him, call him a racist, call him anti-Hispanic, stupid, mentally unfit. He's basically a felon. He shouldn't be in it. We're going to impeach him. We're going to keep this thing going. All of us stay on the same playbook here. We're not deviating from the plays. There's not going to be any audible calls on the field. We're sticking to this playbook. And they have different quarterbacks at different times. So last week it was Dick Durbin. He was a quarterback. At other times it'll be Joe Scarborough. He'll be the quarterback. He'll carry the message, and then it'll be a website or some other MSNBC host. But the question is, what do Republicans do? My view is, contrary to what all the bloviators on MSNBC were saying today, and I know you don't watch this show, but I do, my kids today had the day off. Don't ask me why. They have a professional day at their school. These kids have had more days off. Professional day. We never had such a thing as a professional day. Have you ever heard of that, James, a professional day?
Never in my entire life.
What is that? You are professionals and you get the whole summer off. How is it? I mean, I love teachers. Don't get me wrong. I have 2 in my family. But I don't understand the professional days. We have a professional day. I want a professional day. We have a professional. They just had yesterday off for MLK Day. Now they have Friday half day because of the March for Life, which is great because I want my kids are going to go. But I mean, come on, they're never in school. So my daughter's sitting at the kitchen counter with me this morning. I whipped up some eggs with chopped up lox and pepper jack cheese, and it was good.
Wow, that sounds
scrambled
delicious.
eggs. Oh yeah, it was good. I think I had 4 eggs. Is that bad? And
Yeah,
then
that's good for you.
Anyway, why am I going into these details? Hardly interesting. But Maria said to me, she said, she's 12. She said, do you like watching this show? Because, of course, she hears me talking back to the TV like a crazy person. She said, do you like listening to this show, watching? I said, do I look like I'm enjoying this? She said, no, so why are you watching it? I said, well,
Because you're a
good
glutton
question.
for punishment.
No, I said, I have to do it for my show. And she said, oh. She said, that one always seems angry. She was pointing to Joe. That one always seems angry. I said, his head is about to blow off his shoulders because he's so jealous of President Trump because he wanted to be president. Joe Scarborough wanted to be president, and Donald Trump beat him too, and Joe Scarborough will never be president. And then she said something about his forehead being really tall. And then I ended the conversation. Like, we don't talk about the way people look. It's not nice. But these people just go on and on and on about how the Republicans must understand that demographics is destiny. How many times have we heard that? Demographics is destiny. And that if you don't do this for the Dreamers, you'll never win again. It's like a Hobson's choice. If you don't do this for the DACA kids, then you're finished as a party. That's what that dope John Heilman was saying today. And he's the one, by the way, in the fall of 2016 was saying, Donald Trump is finished. What a fool. If Republicans are idiots forever nominating him, he'll never win. I mean, this guy, when's the last time he got anything right? So my question to you today is, we're going to do a lot on this today because this is my issue and I really care about it. Do you think the president should cede to the wishes of the Chamber of Commerce open borders types and give a clean DACA? Joe Scarborough started something of a chant today. He started his own hashtag. I think we have the soundbite.
Listen to the people in the streets. Listen to the people that knock on doors, that are going to be making phone calls for you in 2018. Don't do a deal with this guy. No DACA, no deal.
So, again, let me just restate this for you. The Democrats are willing to shut down the U.S. government, shut it down, to placate people who are here in the country illegally and those who profit off of their future votes and those who profit off of low-skilled, cheap labor. That's what they think of their country today. That's what they think of the rule of law. That's how little they think of it. Illegal immigrants' demands come before the needs of the American people. Let me repeat it. Illegal immigrants' demands come before the needs of the American people. 855-40-LAURA. When we come back, we will remind you of what happened 4.5 years ago when it was a Republican who shut down the government and who these very same people blamed. Don't go away.
Don't blame me. I can't help it.
If you do, let me say again, you are too weak and too spineless
and too stupid
when it comes to politics and too cowardly to be given control of Congress in 2018.
For hardworking Americans like us, it doesn't seem like there's ever enough time in the day. Freshly is the easiest and most convenient way to eat healthy, no matter what life throws your way. Freshly's team of chefs create all-natural, gluten-free dinners and deliver them fresh to your door. So even if you get stuck at work late, you can still come home to a delicious dinner cooked by a chef. No more worrying about having to figure out what's for dinner, and especially no mess to clean up after. Freshly chefs source the finest all-natural ingredients they can find, and then they work with nutritionists to ensure that their meals are as healthy as possible. All of the meals are made to order and pre-portioned. Their menu is created by chefs for people who want to eat healthy but are living busy lives and don't always have the time to do shopping, cooking, and cleaning. Check out this week's menu created by Freshly chefs and get $25 off your first order of 6 chef-cooked dinners plus free shipping by going to freshly.com/Laura. You'll feel so relieved to come home to a chef-cooked meal every night with Freshly. That's freshly.com/Laura for $25 off your first order. Order today to see what life's like when you no longer have to think about dinner.
It was so obvious, listening to the DHS secretary, listening to Tom Cotton, listening to David Perdue, it was so obvious that they were lying, that they were holding on to a legalistic semantic argument to lie about Dick Durbin, saying, oh no, the president never said anything like that.
So the demonization of two great men, Tom Cotton and Senator David Perdue, who are standing firm on the issue of immigration because they know they took an oath to uphold and defend the U.S. Constitution for U.S. citizens. The protections therein protect those who are lawfully present in the United States of America. I don't care what any activist judge says to the contrary. The constitutional obligation of men and women elected to Congress runs to the people of America, not to anyone who happens to stumble across the border. And if President Trump decides by some crazy notion, which I don't think he'll decide, that, oh, it's just give in on this and it'll be okay, then he's finished. So the exact opposite advice that the Democrats are giving should be followed. The president should stand firm and expose exactly who is putting serious, important government functions at risk. to cater to the needs of illegal immigrants. 855-40-LAURA. Lots of good news to report in the Trump economy. The Dow is now on track to hit 26,000. It's hard to believe that. Oh, my gosh, 26,000. The three major equity benchmarks have risen between 22 and 30% this past year. The economy is expanding. Corporate profit growth is up, of course, and enthusiasm over Trump's tax cuts and continued efforts at deregulation, his other business-friendly policies. Shale production, this is amazing, is poised to push U.S. oil output to more than 10 billion barrels a day. We still need all that wind power, though. The U.S. government forecasts that the nation's production will climb to 11 million barrels a day by late 2019. That's a level that would rival Mother Russia. That's the top producer in the world, by the way. And daily trading volumes of all oil futures contracts have more than doubled in the past decade, and it's only gone up this past year. Again, the major Democrat freakout is because things are going so well. If you missed my segments last night on TV, we had some doozies. I had a segment with Antoine Wright. He was in South Carolina. And also another pastor who was on, Pastor Mark Byrne. He was fabulous. And they were, it was like two people on two different planets. Both happen to be African American. We'll play Antoine 1, James. And he is making a point that Martin Luther King would be horrified about Donald Trump. Let's listen.
I would be curious to know what Reverend King would think about the leader of the free world calling NFL athletes who are peacefully protesting SOBs. I would love to see what Reverend King would talk about a budget that comes out of the White House that cuts programs like Meals on Wheels.
But you're making our point,
I would
Antoine.
love to see.
You're making the point of the segment which you said wasn't valid. Well, he goes on. Let's listen.
We have to save ourselves. Government can be a bootstrap for a number of people to pull them out of certain situations. It's called investing where we need to be.
We've tried it for 50 years. 50 years, $5 trillion. What has it gotten us?
Laura, we have not done that effectively. We have not. Look at K-12 education in this country.
Well, okay, are you for school choice? Are you for school choice?
I am totally against school choice because it will eventually lead us back to a place of segregation.
So you want to keep the kids in underperforming schools. Okay, all right. So you want to keep the kids in underperforming schools.
What I want to do is invest. I want to invest equally, Laura.
We want to invest. What does that even mean? We want to invest equally. So whatever Choate and Deerfield spend per pupil on education, we're going to spend via the U.S. taxpayers? On public education? Is that what the argument is? I don't even understand their arguments at this point. But Pastor Mark Byrne was awesome. We'll play some of that. If you missed it, it was a phenomenal segment. He's like, he was on with this other guest, actually, who's also very nice, but she's, obviously very liberal, Wendy Acefo, who basically said that, nothing's really getting better and the numbers aren't telling the real story. So the numbers aren't getting better for African Americans. People say these things, and I feel like I'm operating on a different planet. It's a completely different stratosphere of thinking. How can you honestly go on television and say things aren't improving for African Americans in the United States and acting like we're back in 1961 and police are releasing dogs on black protesters? I just don't. I don't understand how you retain credibility and actually go on TV and say these things. And I like these guests as people. They're nice people, and that I'm really glad they're on the show, and I'm really trying to make progress. But it is very frustrating, extremely frustrating when people come on and say things like the lives of African Americans are not improving under Trump. All right, we have a lot more to get to. Rand Paul will join us, and a lot more coming up.
False accusation, I can't take back.
It was so obvious, listening to the DHS secretary, listening to Tom Cotton, listening to David Perdue, it was so obvious that they were lying, that they were holding on to a legalistic semantic argument to lie about Dick Durbin, saying, oh no, the president never said anything like that, when in fact they may have heard it as House instead of whole.
Meanwhile,
a distinction without a difference, while they absolutely assassinate Dick Durbin's character.
You are listening to your Healthy Radio Addiction, the Laura Ingraham Show, 855-40-LAURA. This is the new Democrat line of the day. Dick Durbin, great American. Tom Cotton, veteran, served his country in active combat. And David Perdue, senator from Georgia, bad dudes just lying. This is insanity. But this is the way it goes in D.C. And this is why you can't pay much attention to any of this, because it always is whose ox is being gored. That's always the question. 2012, they blamed the shutdown on Ted Cruz because Barack Obama would not budge. Barack Obama back then was hailed as a smart negotiator because he would not give in to Ted Cruz. But now Donald Trump won't give in, and suddenly Donald Trump is the evil, racist ne'er-do-well. Joining us now, my friend, I'm delighted he's with us, Senator Rand Paul from the great state of Kentucky. He joins us now. Senator Paul, great to talk to you. How you doing?
Very good, Laura. Thanks for having me.
So give me your take on where we are here. I was going back and watching some of the old videos from 2013 and how, again, President Obama was standing firm and he was holding the line, and these Republicans were the ones at fault. But now we got Democrats apparently willing to shut down the government to give clean amnesty to illegal immigrants, and it's Trump's fault.
Well, it's a bit naive for Democrats to think when they control no branches of government, they don't control the House, they don't control the Senate, they don't control the presidency, they're going to get everything they want. So really, this would have to be a negotiation. I think the president holds the cards, and if he stands firm, he'll get a decent negotiation on this. And I think there is actually a compromise to be had. I think there's a compromise to be had. What I would do is I just wouldn't add to immigration. We admit about 1 million people a year. If you want to admit these DACA kids, admit them, but subtract them from the totals that we admit every year, and do not increase immigration. Fix diversity lottery for everyone. Fix chain migration for everyone. And do border security, including wall. And I think there is a deal to be had. But it's not a deal where you go to the Gang of Six, which is the same as the Gang of Eight. These are the moderate Republicans, and they think they represent everyone. What's naive about them is they don't represent all the conservative Republicans in the House. So anything the Gang of Six thinks they want to pass, working with Dick Durbin and those guys, it has no validity that it will pass in the House.
No, and I think, again, you've been making this point, which I think is brilliant. And you know me, I don't suck up to you, Senator, but I've liked your argument all along on this. And I think that's where this is going to end up. That's what I tend to believe. But who knows? The Democrats may be willing to shut it down to drive some type of narrative that Trump is anti-Hispanic. They might want to do that. I think it's really stupid. But they might be going there. I don't know.
About 6 months ago, I went to the Democrats that were promoting the Dreamer Act, and I said, maybe there's a compromise here where you don't get everything you want, but they get to stay as long as we subtract them from the normal totals of immigration. And they came back to me and said, no way, we want everything, we want what we want. And this has been the battle of immigration for years up here now. The people who say, oh, immigration is because Republicans blocked it, nothing ever changes immigration, because there are some things that are good that we could change, getting rid of diversity lottery, chain migration, et cetera. None of that ever happens because Democrats want what they want, and they're unwilling to compromise. It's really been Democrats want everything. They want comprehensive. They want everything they want, and they've never been willing to compromise with the other side.
Mark Short, domestic policy at the White House yesterday, said, we feel like there's still a deal to be made here. Things we are asking for are common sense. And again, they're not closing the door. They're keeping the door open at the White House. But I think even Congressman Diaz-Balart, who is certainly more in line with Lindsey Graham than I am on immigration, and I think he would probably be more on Graham's side substantively. Even he came out in this Washington Post piece, Senator Paul, and said, coming out of that meeting and leaking something the president said behind closed doors was a toxic move. That was a move that hurt the process.
When you realize you have all these holier than thou, mightier moralizers coming out And when you look back at Lindsey Graham's comments in 2013, he said exactly, if the president did say this, he said that we can't have all these folks coming from these hellhole countries. There have to be limits. And I'm not saying that's a good way of putting it for Lindsey Graham or the president, but when he said it, nobody was calling him a racist, and now he's a great statesman that everybody's looking towards for talking to President Trump and telling President Trump he was wrong. But in reality, there is a valid point. More people want to come from economically distressed countries than non-economically distressed countries. And so there do have to be the recognition that if everyone could come, there was a survey done a couple years ago and said if everybody who wanted to come could come to the U.S., 700 million people would come next year. And so we can't have all of them coming. So obviously we do need to be aware that more of them want to come from economically distressed areas. If the debate had been in those terms, we never would have gotten into all this other stuff. But we are where we are. The left is making it worse by continuing, the left-wing networks, the left-wing politicians, by continuing just to make this all about calling the president names.
And now the hashtag is no DACA, no deal. So that is what is trending on the left right now, and MSNBC this morning picked up on it. I think if I had to guess right now, I'd say they're going to push this to the very last second, and maybe they're just doing it for political reasons. I'm not really sure, but it seems like they think they have an electoral victory here.
There's an irony here in that they blame the president and say he's some kind of hater. So I brought up that the president helped finance my medical mission trip to Haiti and to Central America. And you know what they're saying now? They're all calling me a racist. They're all saying they wish, if you look at my Twitter feed, every other Twitter response from a leftist is wishing me violence and I was injured recently. They're wishing that I would be re-injured again. And it's like, really? These are the people calling Trump a hater, and yet they're so filled and consumed with hate that they want violence to be meted out on our public officials, and everybody that disagrees with them they call a racist. It's a terrible situation, but coming from the extreme left. The extreme left doesn't want dialogue. They're the ones destroying any kind of civil atmosphere here.
Well, and it's a shame because on Martin Luther King Day yesterday, we ended up having on our show on Fox, on the Ingraham Angle, we had really interesting conversations about the full life of King and how as a preacher, the core of King was the Bible. That's where he always was. It was always coming from the Bible, and it was a love of God, sacrifice for your fellow man, love over hate, and the left has turned King into a completely secular progressive, so much so that CNN tweeted out that he was socialist before it was cool, and he was an environmentalist before it was cool. And so tagging MLK with all of these reflexive left-wing issues. Of course, he was pro-life, as was his father, and it was before Roe versus Wade, but the sanctity of life, the idea that Dr. King, they can immediately say Dr. King would be for Roe versus Wade. I mean, it's a Rorschach test, apparently.
Yeah. And, you read a letter from a Birmingham jail, and there's a very philosophic discussion of, what is a just law. And one of my favorite quotes from that is that an unjust law is any law that is promulgated on a minority but not made binding on the majority. In other words, a law that does not equally apply to everyone is the very definition of an unjust law. That's what segregation and all of these legalized things that happened in the Jim Crow South were. Is they violated the fundamental principle that a law should apply to everyone equally. And that's an incredible precept. It's simple, but an incredible thing to base a society on, that laws apply. And really our country was one of the first ever to do that. In previous iterations, you had countries that had royal, you had nobility. People always were above the law. And we were the first country, not perfect in the beginning, but after the Civil War, getting closer to the fact that everybody would be treated equally under the law.
We're talking to Rand Paul here on the Laura Ingraham Show. And Senator Paul, there are now 4 or 5 members of Congress who have said they are not coming to the President's State of the Union. Frederica Wilson of the rhinestone cowboy hat fame. Of course, Maxine Waters, John Lewis. What of that?
I've been surprised because throughout 8 years of President Obama, I was there for 6 of those. I went to the White House Christmas party when he was there. I went to this year at the White House Christmas party. There were like 3 Democrats there. In fact, it was kind of a nice party because they didn't come because there was a lot more room and space for everyone. But it was kind of disappointing in the sense that most Republicans did go when President Obama was in the office because the White House really belongs to the people, not to one particular president. And same with the State of the Union. I don't quite get it, but the vitriol has become so crazy. But even though I disagreed with President Obama, I sat down with him to talk about criminal justice reforms and things like that. I called him on the phone. I rode on Air Force One with him. And, I disagreed with him probably 95% of the time, but tried to work with him on the 5% that we did agree with in a civil way.
If you had to give President Trump some advice here, and I know you're probably loath to do that, but just where we are now with the toxicity of the conversation, and the left is clearly just using any opportunity to brand him as a hater or a racist or what have you. How would you advise that he make progress here, if that's possible?
I think on policy, the first year was just an incredible success. Justice Gorsuch was a great success. Getting rid of 15 regulations, great success. Big tax cut, great success. A lot of good things happened. But I would say that intemperate language doesn't help. And so I think we could do even better. We'd be less distracted if we had less of the daily dialogue. And I know that's what he's famous for, and he likes talking directly to the people. But I think if there was less ammunition, we'd get less distracted from the good things that he has done and that we've all been part of.
Well, and I think I would agree with you on that. I think, however, regardless of what he said behind closed doors, I mean, he could have served them tea and crumpets and given them commemorative, White House cufflinks and said, "Look, I can't do this deal." And there would have been something that they took out of that meeting that they would amplify and claim was an insult to the Dreamers or an insult to, to the people. If not his comment about S-hole, there would have been something else. Because, even when the president remember when he went to that, church in Detroit and had those amazing moments, the media almost didn't cover it at all. If I didn't run on it on my own digital recorder, I would have never seen it.
Yeah, and look at the whole Russia thing. You have whole networks that go crazy on this thing. They're still going all on collusion. And really the only evidence we have of collusion right now, the only evidence we have of somebody in Russia being paid for information during the campaign was Hillary Clinton's Oppo research with Chris Steele paying Russian agents for fake dossier information that they stuck in that dossier. That's the only proof we have of actual collusion with Russian agents of the government was Hillary Clinton's campaign paying the Russians, and yet all we still talk about, and that's what I keep asking the left-wing commentators is, well, if y'all want to keep this Mueller investigation going on, I guess we need to investigate the only evidence we have of collusion so far, which is Hillary Clinton paying a British spy to buy information from Russian agents.
Well, I appreciate your logic and common sense on this immigration issue. Senator Paul, you've never been one to be pulled in one way or another on these issues, and I think results ultimately will have a huge effect on the way people think and feel about these issues, regardless of the bloviators out there. And come on TV soon. Give my best to all your staff. Senator Rand Paul here on the Laura Ingraham Show. A lot more to get to, including the latest from the crazy left, as Senator Paul said, on the Russia investigation. Don't go away. Stock market officially hit 26,000 today. Can you imagine if this had happened under Barack Obama? Can you imagine if black unemployment in 1 year had fallen as much as it did this past year under Barack Obama? I keep saying, if the same metrics were in place in any 1 year of the Obama administration as we have now, they would already be etching and carving and putting his visage up on Mount Rushmore. They would already be, planning it all out. They're not having parades to honor Barack Obama. But, again, Donald Trump doesn't count because he happens to be of the wrong party, and so their only response is to seek and destroy. Should Donald Trump agree to a clean amnesty under any circumstances? I want to hear from you. 855-40-LAURA.
Your healthy radio addiction starts now.
Power to the people!
The Laura Ingraham Show.
Another immigration sob story.
These have to be very difficult days for you. What is it like for you and your kids to watch what's going on in Washington right now with the Dreamers?
It's very hard to keep coming in home after work and school day for the girls and having to watch the news, being very attentive of what's going on around, especially with the whole immigration deal that is going on, that they still haven't made up their mind.
You are listening to the Laura Ingraham Show, 855-40-LAURA, CNN in full immigration sob story mode. Unfortunately, they don't have the same zeal to report the other sob stories out there, those of American citizens who have been either forced out of the workforce or forced to take 2 and 3 jobs to make the same they were making under other circumstances because of the glut of low-wage workers that came and gobbled up their previous jobs, whether in construction or landscaping or running a business. The sob stories only go one way, and they continue.
What do you think's going to happen? What are you afraid of?
I'm afraid of going back to a country that I haven't been in 21 years, that I don't even think I remember. The fact that I will be coming to a country that I don't know, and whether I'll be bringing my kids with me or not. I think that we all see the violence on the news where I come from, Mexico, and it's very difficult to even think about having to start thinking about making a different life.
Well, I'm sure it is hard for her to think about making a different life, and that's why parents shouldn't bring people here illegally in the first place. But I'm sure it is very hard. And I thought she was going to, use derogatory language to describe her country of birth, Mexico, for a second, but she didn't go there. 855-40-LAURA. These immigration sob stories are coming out right on cue. Again, another attempt to force Donald Trump to agree to something that will destroy his base and their enthusiasm for him and destroy any chance of his being reelected, which would be a clean passage of amnesty in exchange for basically nothing. This as the DOJ and DHS today, Department of Homeland Security, are reporting that 3 out of 4 individuals convicted of international terrorism and terrorism-related offenses were foreign-born. The Department of Justice today released this report revealing that 402 individuals convicted of international terrorism-related charges in U.S. federal courts between September 11, 2001 and December 31, 2016 were indeed foreign-born. Over the same period, ICE removed approximately 1,716 aliens with national security concerns. And then in 2017 alone, DHS had 2,554 encounters with individuals on the terror watch list, also known as the FBI's terrorist screening database, who were traveling to the United States. This report was required by Section 11 of President Trump's executive order that was titled Protecting the Nation from Foreign Terrorists' Entry into the U.S., which declared that it is the policy of the United States to protect its citizens from terror attacks, including those committed by foreign nationals. So this report reveals an indisputable, sobering reality. Our immigration system has determined our national security and our public safety, said Attorney General Sessions, and the information in this report is only the tip of the iceberg. We currently have a terrorism-related investigation against thousands of people in the U.S., including hundreds of people who came here as refugees. I don't think Chris Cuomo will be doing breathless reports about that. We'll get to all of this in your calls. Let's go to the line. DJ in Texas on line 3. Should President Trump, under any circumstances, agree to the heavy hand of what Durbin and Graham are trying to push on him? Go ahead.
Absolutely not. It's a ridiculous thought. Anytime, at prima facie evidence, that the Democrats offer something, it's absolutely not good for Trump, and it's not good for the American people. That should be first thing on Trump's mind. I know that Trump's base gets sketchy and scared, and we feel like we've been duped anytime Trump even or goes towards agreeing with something that the Democrats, especially amnesty. If they go along with amnesty, it's going to be the end of the Republican Party and Trump in two ways. One, they're going to lose confidence from all the people. Two, the base for the Democrats is going to grow exponentially, and we may never get a president again.
Well, that's why DJ, when they went to Trump last week on Thursday, and when they say it's bipartisan, that means nothing, because Graham and Durbin agreeing on an immigration measure is like saying the sun comes up. Yeah, of course they agree, because they're both open borders politicians. They want more and more and more immigrants. There's no limit to the amount of immigrants they want coming to the United States, either of them, for different reasons. But the idea that 800,000 people who are here illegally can then bring in millions more via chain migration is just that does spell the total end of the GOP. And Trump is not a moron, contrary to what they might think. He wasn't going to agree to that. They knew it, though. They had to know he could never agree to that. And so then they go out of the meeting and they leak this, the colorful language from Trump, which I don't approve of, but nevertheless it was similar language used by both Lindsey Graham and Barack Obama to describe other countries, third world countries, countries with real problems. And big deal, as if these Democrats suddenly have the ears of a child, a 5-year-old child. They've never heard this language before. Oh, it's racist. Oh, get out of town. Stephanie in Alabama on line 4. Miss Stephanie, do you feel like these poor sob stories being trotted out all over CNN and MSNBC, that it's our hearts have to open to these dreamers and these DACA people, and we've got to do something for them, Stephanie?
Laura, do you want me to tell you the real sob story of immigration? This false sense of humanity that the Democrats are spewing is horrible. I'll tell you the true story of what happened. Several years ago, a recruiter goes down to Mexico and tells this family, hey, I've got this farmer. He's got all this work for you. Come to America. It's the best thing that will ever happen. These low-skilled workers come over with, oh, I'm going to make all this money in America. Well, they get here, and the farmer uses them for one season to pick a crop, and the farmer doesn't have to provide any safe work conditions or anything because he knows he's not going to get sued for workers' compensation, or they're not going to complain. They move 8 or 9 people in a single wide trailer, and once that crop, they're done. They have nowhere else to go. They have no food. They have no income, and we're supposed to let more people come in and live in these conditions? I just don't understand. They're telling me that there's not enough work to go around. They go from farm to farm to farm, and they're like, nope, we're full. And they're like, you're going to let more people in, more unskilled people in? No, it needs to stop. These people are living in substandard conditions, but the Democrats say we're inhumane for wanting to stem the tide of illegal immigration.
Yeah, who's compassionate now? And why is the compassion only run one way? Why don't we express the same concerns and compassion for the American worker, the inner city family, whose best job could be working perhaps at McDonald's? And by the way, try to get a job at McDonald's in Northern Virginia. It's all, for the most part, it's all Spanish-speaking workers now. I noticed that. A lot of Spanish-speaking workers. I mean, that's fine, but are there no people who need those jobs? I mean, that's a job I had. I wasn't very good at it, but I did have it for a year until I got fired. So, why are entire industries now being occupied by only one ethnicity? Why is that happening? Why do the diversity people like that? How is that diversity? Why is every 7-Eleven owned by only one ethnicity in the area? Why is that? I mean, I guess you could just say they're better and smarter and more entrepreneurial. Okay. I guess we can go to the American people and tell them that. You're listening to the Laura Ingraham Show, 855-40-LAURA. Sam in Virginia on line 5. Sam.
Hey, good morning. First of all, again, welcome to Fox News late at night, at 10 o'clock. I'm glad to have you there. Appreciate the comments this morning. I'm very much concerned about the DACA thing. I'm not one that wants just to open this DACA thing to anybody who wants to come in. My feeling, these are immigrants, and if they're going to want to be U.S. citizens, they need to go through the exact same training and learning history of this nation, before they can be certified as a citizen and have the right to vote. Right now, the Democrats do not want to educate these people. All they want is their votes, and quite frankly, once they get it, they could care less about their welfare. They just want that vote, and if they can't read, all they got to learn to do is punch the D. And I think they are doing the country a great disservice. Unfortunately, this president, and you mentioned it earlier, that he uses this derogatory language in his tweets, and I think you and I would be the same. If he's going to call me names and things, he can have the best program in the world, and I'm probably not going to support him. And he's shooting himself in the foot. He's a brilliant man, and he has the right ideas. And if he could just get his ego under control, he could be thought of in the realm of Reagan and Lincoln and even Margaret Thatcher, the people who were true statesmen in this world.
You know what I think? You know what I think, Sam? Stay on the line. I actually think he missed an opportunity yesterday on Martin Luther King Day. I think Donald Trump, his staff, I'm sure they suggested it, but it was shot down. He should have been in a church yesterday. He should have been in an African-American church. I don't care where he was traveling, if it's in Florida, if he's in D.C. He should have been in a church, and he should have been with African-Americans who were commemorating Martin Luther King and what he meant to them. Just showing up is really important. It's not the day to go to the Trump National Golf Course. I'm sorry. Optics are important, but feeling, it's your feeling. And I think he truly does want the lives of Americans to be improved regardless of race or where you came from or your religion. He wants everybody's life to be better. That's why he decided to leave his good life to be put through the meat grinder of what's happened to him day after day after day. Families being threatened with legal investigations. He's being threatened. They call him racist. I mean, it's a great privilege, but it's not like it's fun. So he does deeply care. I know that for a fact. But sometimes you got to do things that are uncomfortable, and maybe they're trying to frighten him out of black churches and not going to, because someone's going to scream out you're a racist. Let them scream out you're a racist. The fact that you're there and that you listen counts for an enormous amount. Do you agree with me on that? 855-40-LAURA. This new Justice Department report is a shocker, but not really. The terrorism that's come to our shores and attempted terrorist acts are coming from foreign-born individuals who either have ties here, came as refugees, or trying to enter the country, and Trump puts our safety and security first and foremost. When we come back, what happened the last time the Republicans were supposedly responsible for shutting down the government? What did the media do then? Whom did they blame? The double standard is again glaring. Stay with us.
Republicans own Washington, D.C. You should not give them a single vote in keeping the government running. That's their job. This is their government. This is their Congress. This is their presidency. Don't give them a single vote unless they give you a clean bill on Dreamers.
My hair hurt. You're listening to the Laura Ingraham Show, 855-40-LAURA. Remember to follow me on Facebook and on Twitter, and you can be part of the conversation. We have, and I hope it's up there, I think it is, Jim Carrey's worst movie. I want you to go to Facebook and vote on which movie is his worst. He trashed Trump the other day, so I decided to go back into his annals of horrific films, and so it's a fun little poll. So go to Facebook. and vote. And Ingraham Angle tonight, phenomenal show on tap. You're not going to want to miss the opening monologue called The Angle. Tape it if you're out, and you'll be able to watch it in the morning or later on in the evening. So we love having new viewers, and spread the word if you would. All right, so that's Joe Scarborough, no DACA, no deal. He's officially a member of the far left Democrat Party now. He calls himself an independent. We should just call him Joe Brzezinski, don't you think? It's Morning Mika, and Joe Brzezinski is the co-host. And okay, so that's him. Now, so he's blaming the Republican president if the Democrats decide they are going to not sign on to government funding if they don't get 100% of what they want. Okay, so he's blaming Trump. What did they do in 2013? Listen to this setup on MSNBC when Ted Cruz was standing firm with a Democrat president.
It was billed as a big meeting. The first time top congressional leaders would meet the president since the shutdown began. But in the end, Speaker John Boehner characterized the evening meeting at the White House as little more than a polite conversation with no headway. President Obama reiterated that he won't negotiate over his signature health care bill.
Right, no negotiations. Obama says no, not going to negotiate at all. Then this is where it went.
When you have a situation in which a faction is willing potentially to default on U.S. government obligations, then we are in trouble. And if they're willing to do it now, they'll be willing to do it later.
So Obama comes out and says, this is what these people are doing. They're willing to shut the government down because they don't get everything they want. And the media are just piling on Ted Cruz. Talk about a double standard.
My big takeaway was that the president drew a firm line that he's not going to that he will negotiate, right, but he's not going to do it until after he gets both a clean CR that extends the government funding, reopens the government, and raise the debt limit.
Okay, guys. So back then, Obama wanted two things: extend the debt ceiling, and he wanted a clean continuing resolution. He wanted two things. He said, if not, the government's going to shut down. What is Trump saying? I want an end to chain migration, and I want a wall. But now it's Trump's fault to shut down the government. And then John Heilman, let's listen. Ron Fournier, go ahead.
I'm really afraid that these yahoos are going to send us right over the cliff. This is not looking good. And I'll disagree with one thing. Ted Cruz did have a strategy. It was to build his email list and build his national profile. He doesn't care what's going to happen to the country.
So, do you see what I'm saying here? This is a tale of two government shutdowns. That's beyond obvious. Dwayne in Arizona, very quickly. Dwayne.
Oh, Laura, I believe that President Trump should not support any amnesty and hold firm to his guns. My in-laws came from a war-torn Poland, from Russian and German concentration camps and work camps. It took them 9 years to get into the United States. And when they came here, they had to have sponsors. They did not live in poverty because they did it through the legal methods. They raised 2 of their 3 children were born while waiting to come into the United States, one in Africa, one in India.
Amazing. Well, I have to say the tape does not lie. Double standard extraordinaire. Coming up, Victor Davis Hanson.
Podcast One has new shows on our new app. Check out all the cool features to help you explore our exciting new programming, like America's Lakers podcast with Jay Moore, So Random with Corinne Olympios, Attack Each Day, The Harbaugh's podcast, Not Just Sports with Susie Schuster and Rich Eisen, and Sessions with Randy Jackson, as well as your old favorites like The Lady Gang, Steve Austin, Shaquille O'Neal, and Adam Carolla. Get the new Podcast One app in the App Store, Google Play, or podcastone.com.
Things will turn out right, but I'm staying here with leaving on my mind.
And if the president calls it a wall, that's fine with you. The semantics of it aren't necessarily as important to you, correct?
We need to return to what it's about. It's about the lives of 800,000 or so young people brought to this country at a young age, have done everything our society has asked of them, have gained admission to the University of California, which is a very competitive institution. Are we really going to deport this kind of talent? That's not what our immigration system should be all about.
apparently every DACA recipient is at the University of California getting a PhD in, I don't know, computer science or nuclear engineering, biomechanical engineering, according to Janet Napolitano. He's the chancellor of the University of California Schools. Joining us now is Victor Davis Hanson, who has been writing about, studying the effects of mass immigration, the effects on our country, the effects on the state of California. He joins us now. Victor, good to have you on.
Thank you for having me.
Let's talk about what Janet Napolitano, the former head of DHS under Obama, what she just said. The compassion only goes one way. It goes to the illegal immigrants who are here, yet little compassion for those Americans who've been adversely affected by the glut of illegal immigrants in the United States.
Yeah, I think that we have there are people in DACA, the 800,000 person cohort, that may have gone to college and graduate, but that's 5%, Laura, and it's less than a half of 1% that joined the military, and about 40% dropped out of high school, and only 5%, as I said, have a college degree. So it's what you'd expect when you have a lot of people coming in an illegal fashion from a country whose parents came illegally from a country that doesn't speak English, and they did not have education or capital. It's just a fact. So what do we do with people from DACA? And I think it's really, this issue is sort of emblematic of the whole debate. And what we're seeing is the Chamber of Commerce, Wall Street Journal wing wants inexpensive labor. That's just a fact. That's what Lindsey Graham's all about. And that has really depressed entry-level wages for American workers of all different backgrounds. And the Democratic Party has looked at what's happened to California, what's happening in Nevada, Colorado, New Mexico, and they found a formula of flipping red states purple and then blue in a way that their message can't do. So for Dick Durbin to go into a meeting and expect him to be sincere or to be serious about negotiating away illegal immigration is crazy. They don't want to negotiate away. In their mindset, it's not broken. It never was broken. It's wonderful. And that is more or less true of the Jeb Bush Wall Street Journal wing of the Republican Party. The problem is that about 30 or 40% of the country is irate, more on polls, but 30 or 40% is really irate about it, and they were the people who elected Donald Trump. And so suddenly there's a third player in this conversation that doesn't accept these premises. They want to, support the law, enforce the law, and as far as the people are here, they're willing to make a deal if you say, if you're not on public assistance, if you've been here 4 or 5 years, if you are willing to pay a fine, if you have not committed a crime, we'll give you maybe a green card in exchange for E-Verify, end the chain migration, build a wall. But that's not going to happen because the Democratic Party cannot afford to make that deal. Jennifer Palmieri said that when she wrote a memo saying the DACA cohort is absolutely essential to our electoral strategy.
We're talking to Victor Davis Hanson here on the Laura Ingraham Show. The amazing difference between the way they treated the government shutdown in 2013, the same characters on MSNBC were blaming Ted Cruz, despite the fact that Barack Obama, after the Republicans actually went up to the White House, John Boehner and others, and tried to cut some deal to end the shutdown, Obama said, no, I want a clean, continuing resolution. I want the debt ceiling raised. Those are my two non-negotiables. For that, he was heralded as a strong and powerful leader. Now Trump does the same thing on his two issues that are non-negotiable, and they are proceeding to brand him, the worst of all possible things. The double standard is glaring.
Yeah, I don't think, though, historically, when the Republicans did it in 95 and 96, they had a little bump, but Clinton really benefited from that. Any party who shuts down the government, whether it's legitimate or not, or for good or bad cause, is not going to come out ahead politically, I don't think, and especially in this case, because the average voter is going to say, wow, they shut down the post office, they shut down the government over the status of people here illegally. This is crazy. So that's a losing message, I think, for the Democrats.
I know, and they're trying to blame Trump for it. When Trump's White House yesterday in the Washington Post said, we're more than willing to, to come to some kind of agreement here, but it has to be ending chain migration. It has to be a real enforcement.
I don't think they can afford to do that. Yeah, I don't think. See, if you end chain migration, if you end open borders, and you have a melting pot assimilation paradigm, then you're basically saying to the Democratic Party, someone who came here from Mexico is going to be like an Italian American. If his name is Lopez or Martinez, he's going to be no more predictable politically than is Cuomo or Giuliani as a surname. And we're going to treat people as individuals based on the content of their character, not their tribal affiliations or their appearance. And the Democrats don't have confidence in the progressive message to appeal to 51% of the people. And their way of thinking, we can't afford to do that because we've had 13 million, 14 more than that probably come in, and they become dependents or wards of the state, at least in some cases, and we offer them a whole basket of entitlements and quid pro quo fashion, chain migration. It was all there in Jennifer Palmieri's memo. We can flip red states like Colorado, New Mexico, California. We can flip them blue. And I just don't think they're going to negotiate that away.
So they will then move toward this government shutdown and then seek to blame Trump for it, and then the media will join in. I think that's their strategy. And I don't think it's going to work. I think people are going to get angry, and then they're going to be forced to make some concessions. But they're never going to say, we want to give up open borders. They're just not going to do it. The old Democratic Party, remember Bill Clinton to Jimmy Carter said, open borders are bad. Cesar Chavez went down with thugs and tried to stop illegal immigration because they said, it's competition to unionization. It takes away entitlements from the poor. It's not, these people are not going to vote for us, but not this new progressive party. They're just not going to do it. And there's no way you can, after 2008, that was the big dividing line. After 2008 and the ascension of Obama, they're never going to go back again. They don't see that the system broken. They see it as wonderful. And it's really changed their electoral chances, and they're not going to give that up unless they're forced to. Victor, George Will responded to your recent column. I believe, James, was this yesterday or the day before? When was this? Yeah, yesterday. I don't know which one. I haven't read it, what he said. Yeah, well, let's listen.
He's committed no impeachable offense. Being a lout is not a high crime or misdemeanor.
So you think he's protected by the fact he hasn't committed felonies or misdemeanors even?
He has committed no behavior looking forward that impeachment would be used as a prophylactic measure to stop him.
Well, interesting word. Anyway, let's talk about it.
The country voted for this. They ought to have the experience intensely and protractedly so they're not tempted to do it again.
Your reaction to that? Apparently that's in response to your column, my staff says.
I mean, he's in one way he's right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the country voted for it. So what could you impeach him on? He hasn't committed. Will was right about that. Where I disagree with him is he thinks that we have to be punished by 3% 4% economic growth. We have to be punished by record Wall Street. We have to be punished by paying some attention to people who were forgotten between the two coasts. We have to pay attention to illegal immigration. He doesn't want that anymore. And so we have to be punished by having this Trump implode or discredit the Republican Party. And then Phoenix-like people like Bill Kristol and George Will are going to meet in a room and they're all going to say, how do we bring back Jeb Bush and Mitt Romney and get a party that will be respectable and get about 46% of the vote and lose every election, but that will be liked again. And that's pretty much their ideology. I see it, I'm not speaking ill of my colleagues, but I see it where I work at the Hoover Institution. I see it at National Review. You want to become a sober and judicious conservative commentator, and your books will be well reviewed, you'll be esteemed, and you'll just sort of slow down the progressive project here and there, but otherwise you're going to be irrelevant. That's pretty much what Will is arguing for. My problem is I wish George Will was looking out the window right now at where I live in southern Fresno County, and he would see a completely demoralized population, a destroyed industrial center, the effects of illegal immigration. And it's not the community that it was 30 years ago. And that's same true as southern Michigan or northern Ohio or central Wisconsin. And people really have hope now, whether it's more energy production or better GDP or lower unemployment. I just don't understand how people's cultural biases. I know that Trump can be crude. I know that he can have all sorts of problems, but I mean, FDR, JFK, their stories were not their worst moments. We didn't report just on their worst moments. We took everything in a balanced fashion. So Will looks at the worst moments of Trump, and then it offends his cultural sensibilities, and he's willing to write off the entire good that has happened a year that affects a lot more people than George Will. So I'm just
he's willing. Well, he's in Chevy Chase. He's a gorgeous neighborhood, and a lot of us are lucky to live in great neighborhoods. But you don't see the effects of it in Chevy Chase. Going between your house and the Chevy Chase Club. You don't see that. You see the people at the Chevy Chase Club, doing the yard work and stuff. And I've always loved George Will. I consider him a friend. We've kind of not been all that friendly. I have great respect for so much of what he's done in his life, and I know he's upset because Trump was kind of rude to him, and then, everybody got their backs up. But to be willing to trade away the entire Supreme Court in this huge economic growth because you think Trump's boorish, okay.
I mean, that's sort of like saying we can't appreciate what JFK did during the Cuban Missile Crisis because he deflowered a 19-year-old virgin in the White House. He did. Had that reported that, and had that been the sum total of the JFK presidency, I don't know what would have happened. Would we have impeached him over that? So people they're not gods. They're just humans. And I'm not condoning what Trump says and does sometimes. But you have to look at 310 million people's lives. And the Progressive Project was leading us in a direction that was...
The following program is a PodcastOne.com production.
Your healthy radio addiction starts now.
Power to the people!
The Laura Ingraham Show.
It must be nice, it must be nice to have Washington on your side. It must be nice, it must be nice to have Washington on your side.
Republicans own Washington, D.C. You should not give them a single vote in keeping the government running. That's their job. This is their government. This is their Congress. This is their presidency. The American people said they wanted Republicans to run Washington, D.C. Let them run Washington, D.C. Don't give them a single vote unless they give you a clean bill on Dreamers.
Somebody has to stand up.
You're listening to the Laura Ingraham Show, 855-40-LAURA. Clean bill on Dreamers, from the Democrats' playbook to Joe Scarborough's mouth. A former Republican turned full-blown liberal. We'll be examining all aspects of the blame game going on with an impending government shutdown because the Democrat Party cares more about illegal immigrants than they do care about the average American worker. This is a win-win for Donald Trump. The idea that these Democrats think that they're going to be my way or the highway when it comes to legalizing 800,000 people, and not just that, when you ultimately add up how many individuals those 800,000 will be able to sponsor through chain migration, that figure extends to approximately 6.5 million at the low point. So we're talking about what happens once you become an American citizen and how you're able to bring in your family members, aunts, uncles, the nightmare that is chain migration today. Oh, sorry, Dick Durbin said it's racist to say chain migration, even though he said it himself on the Senate floor. All right, we're going to examine all aspects of this. Also going to be joined by Rand Paul. He's stopping by. VDH will be here, Victor Davis Hanson. We have a great show on tap. Also, a phenomenal show on tap tonight on the Ingraham angle you do not want to miss. We've been noticing that there's I'm not going to give it away because I know people listen to the show and I don't want them to steal my ideas. But suffice it to say, the Democrats think that none of us have any historical memory on particular issues. They feel like we'll just go about our business and respond to whatever meme of the day, Media Matters, and the MSNBC types are putting out. But we're a little smarter than that. So we'll bring you the truth about what's really going on. This is pure politics. There's nothing else involved. They knew that Donald Trump could not accept that absurd Lindsey Graham attempted cram down of immigration amnesty with no meaningful border enforcement and an increase in chain migration. They knew that. And so, for days and days, I've been saying to myself, well, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I don't want to jump to this idea that this whole thing was a setup. But, it's beginning to look that way. I mean, it's probably not, but it sure could be. When I say a setup, I mean this. Graham has now gotten to know Donald Trump pretty well. And he thinks he's going to run over to the White House after having some morning call with the president. And he's going to convince the president that everything he's ever said on chain migration now is not applicable. And it's not necessary at all to make any progress on ending chain migration, and that the president will essentially just agree to legalizing 800,000 people and allowing them to bring in countless family members. So they either think that he's wildly idiotic and stupid, which I guess they could think, but I don't really think they think that. Or they think, gosh, we don't have the leverage to get what we want here,